Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie and today I'm going to be giving you the Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag. This tag was created by Lindsay's Little Library and I was tagged by Michael Nip, so I will leave both of those in the description below. There are 10 prompts to this tag, all centering around dilemmas of a book nerd. So here we go. Dilemma 1. Book storage. How do you store and organize your books? I have bookshelves. I have 5 bookcases. I try to organize my books by genre, but that's not always possible when you run out of shelf space, so you just kind of have to stick them wherever they fit. But as much as possible, I keep genres together, and for the most part, I try to keep authors' works together as well, even if they span across multiple genres. I have one bookcase that's dedicated to contemporaries and nonfiction, and then the bookcase behind me is dedicated to all of my TBR unread books. Well, most of them, not all of them, are over here. And then one bookcase is dedicated to my favorites, although I've had to put some over there that I wouldn't necessarily classify as my favorites of all time. That's just kind of where I had to put them because I ran out of room. And then the other 2 have dystopian, fantasy, historical fiction, classics, all of those. Dilemma 2 is tracking. How do you keep track of what you have read and what books you own? I do most of my stuff through Goodreads, just like I'm sure most of you do as well. And then I've started using notebooks and journals to keep track of my reading a little bit, and I mostly use them for tentative TBRs that I don't share with you on my channel just because I don't usually stick to them, but they're more of like general ideas of the books that I want to read within the next few months. And so if I don't get to them in the month that I want to get to them in, I at least want to finish them within the next few months. Dilemma 3 is borrow. Do you lend your books out? Not really. I'll let a family member borrow a book if I trust them. Friends don't ask to borrow my books because I don't have friends who read. But even if they did ask me, I probably wouldn't lend my book out to them anyway unless I trusted them. Like, I would have to trust the person. Here's actually a fun little horror story. When I first became big into reading when I was like 16, I lived in an apartment with my mom and my brother would come over occasionally. And one time, my mom and I were out of town. And my brother came over to our apartment and invited a bunch of friends over. And then when I got back home, I looked at my bookshelf. And that was back when I only had like maybe 40 books. And I looked at my bookshelf and I noticed that something was missing. And it was my favorite book of all time, which was part of the Mortal Instruments series, was missing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what has happened? So I called my brother and I was like, what happened to my book? He's like, oh yeah, I remember let one of the girls who was over borrow your book. I was like, without asking me? And he didn't really even know this girl. It was a friend of a friend. It took me several months to get that book back, and I kept pestering my brother. I was like, you got to get that book back for me. You need to talk to her. Is she done reading it? Is she done reading it? Is she done? Is she done? Please give me my book back. And I finally did get it back, so that's a good thing. Dilemma 4 is borrowing. How do you buy or acquire your books? Recently, this past year, I've bought most of my books from Book Outlet just because you can literally buy like $200 worth of books for $30 on that site. So it's a very cheap way to acquire books. I also use the library a lot, both going into the library and getting physical books, and then also like the library's resources like Libby. And then if there's a book that I want to buy but it's not on Book Outlet, I'll purchase it from Amazon Prime. I never actually buy books from bookstores because they're so expensive, and as much as I read, I would not be able to afford Barnes & Noble prices. Dilemma 5, comments. How do you respond to the how do you read so much comment? I recently got this comment just a couple nights ago because I was hanging out with a group of friends. Some of them I don't know so well, and one of my friends was telling another person how much I read. It just came up in conversation and everyone was talking about like, oh, I read 12 books last year, and everyone just thought that was so great. And then my friend was like, how many books did you read last year, Madison? I was like, 160. And they just couldn't believe it. So my answer to this question is you just respond by saying, yeah, I just like to read, because people aren't going to understand either way unless they're just as passionate about reading as you. Also, I just want to throw it out there that I don't think there's anything wrong with just reading 12 books. If you read 1 book last year, you should be proud of yourself. Dilemma 6 is next book. How do you pick your next read? I do most of this through Goodreads because I have a very long list of books that I want to read on there. But then also on Goodreads, I make for myself yearly TBRs, and if there are any books on the previous year or years past that I never got to, I try to make it a priority to read those. But honestly, I'm just such a mood reader. It doesn't really matter if I tell myself I'm going to read those books. I may not read them for several years. So I guess the real answer to this question is I look at all the books on my TBR shelves and I just pick whichever one stands out to me in that moment, whichever one I'm in the mood for right then. That changes several times a day sometimes. Dilemma 7 is travel. How do you pick what books you bring on vacation with you? I'm lucky enough to be able to go on several vacations. I go on at least one big vacation every year, so I'm used to picking books for vacation. I do this based off of books that I wouldn't normally read otherwise. There's something about vacation that's so relaxing, it makes me personally want to read more, and I'm actually able to read a whole lot more books on vacation than I am on a normal day-to-day basis. One, because I have nothing else to do on my schedule, but also I just read so much faster on vacation. I don't really know why. So I tend to pick books that I've maybe been putting off for a long time, or books that are kind of smaller and I can plow through a lot of them just within a few days or a week or however long the vacation is. And while I'm on vacation, the more books I read, the faster I go, and it's just so motivational to keep reading and to read as much as possible. I usually have to carry a full backpack separate from my luggage just to hold all of the books that I bring on vacation. Dilemma 8 is annotate. Do you write or highlight or mark up your books in any way? For the most part, no, but sometimes when I do rereads, I like to highlight my favorite quotes, and I only do this on rereads. I think it's because I've already enjoyed the story once and now I'm taking a deeper look into the various parts of the novel. I also like to focus on things that I may have missed the first time around, or the second or third time, however many times I reread the book. And it's interesting because if you reread a book more than once, you notice that with each time, certain things stand out to you more. And so it's cool to do different colors or use different color tabs to mark the parts that I highlighted to signify which reread it was, what time of life I was in when I read that and when I highlighted that section. So I know what was special to me at that point in my life, and it's cool to look back and see how things have changed. It's cool to see what spoke to me, what mattered to me when I was 16 versus when I was 18, or when I'm 21 versus when I was 18. So the answer to this question is yes, but only on rereads. Dilemma 9 is new or backlist. Which do you prefer, new releases or backlist books? I mostly read backlist books, but there are some that I pre-order or I purchase as soon as they're released, and I usually don't get to those right off anyway. So, I mean, if you consider a couple months later to be a new release, then I guess I sometimes read new release books, but for the most part, I like to know everyone's opinions on a book before I read it, because I don't want to invest my time or money on books that my friends haven't read yet and I haven't heard their opinions on it. If they have similar reading tastes as I do and they like a book, then I'll buy it because I know I'll probably like it as well. And if they hated it, then I know I'll probably hate it as well. I also prefer to read books after the hype has passed, because they usually travel around BookTube all at the same time. Everyone reads the same book at the same time and everyone's raving about this book, and it just builds up with people. And even if the book was just okay, a lot of people consciously or subconsciously say that they love the book and they hype it up even more just because everyone else loved it as well. So I tend to wait till all of that has passed before I read a book, which is why most of the books I read are backlist. And it's just a continuing cycle, because even if I'm super excited for a book that's being released, I'm not going to read it until I'm in the mood, and by that point it's already a backlist book. So then when I get to the new releases, they're no longer new releases. So it's an ongoing cycle of reading backlist books, which there's nothing wrong with that. And the last prompt is Dilemma 10, sequels. Do you read books as they are released or wait for an entire series to be published before reading book 1? Honestly, I used to only read series if they were completed, if all the books had been released, because I did not like to wait the year or 2 years for the sequel. That has since changed because most of the BookTube favorite series throughout the years I've already read now. So if I want to keep reading books that I love, I'll have to sacrifice and start a series that hasn't been fully completed yet. But if I had a choice, I would probably wait till the series is complete before I start it, because I like to binge. Although I will say, now that I'm older, I don't really have the time to binge. Whereas when I first became a big reader in high school, during breaks and summertime, I would literally wake up, read all day until the time I went to bed, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, read. And so I had so much more time to binge series, and I pretty much only binged. I don't have that luxury of time anymore. Alright, that is the end of this book tag. Thank you, Michael, for tagging me, and I will leave some people tagged in the description below as well as on Twitter. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more bookish content by me. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.